Hello everybody and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. On this week's episode, we're going to be having a look back to the weekend's games as well as having a look forward, so 12 games to cover this week. And I'm pleased to say I've got some guests with me as well. I'm your host, Sam Biccarino.
I'm Charlie Parks.
And I'm Matt Clough.
Yes, welcome listener. Thank you for joining us. It is Wednesday the 26th of March as we record. There might be a few bits in this episode that are slightly out of date because there is the small matter of some Champions League games coming up that obviously we don't know the results of just yet because it's about 6 p.m. But we'll cover off all the WSL stuff anyway as we do. Like I said, I'm your host, Sam Biccarino, and I'm pleased to say that I've got the Why Always She pod back on this week. Charlie and Matt, how are you doing?
We're great, thanks. We're looking forward to spending this entire podcast talking about Leicester. I believe that's why we've been asked to come on.
I figure, yeah.
Yeah, I did actually. Well, I mean, obviously, I asked you before Leicester won, but you just knew that it was going to happen. That's why you agreed.
Did you ask us in the knowledge that we were going to beat Brighton? Were you feeling confident?
I assumed you'd only say yes if you knew they were going to win. So that was how it came. You were so confident that you would get enough of a lead that you couldn't even throw it away. As much as you tried.
We tried our best.
You did try your best. I was out on Sunday, so I didn't actually watch the game live, and I knew what time it was starting, and then I didn't look at my phone until it had finished, and just saw it was 3-2, and was like, "Oh, cool!" Like, didn't really think that much of it. And then, when I looked into it a bit more and watched the highlights and stuff, it was a bit like, there was a bit more to this game than just Leicester winning this by 1 goal. But we'll get to that as the pod goes on. Let's just have a quick review of what happened this weekend. And, well, what a day it was on Saturday for Rikke Madsen. Her first match back after pregnancy, and she was proposed to on the pitch after the game. Luckily, it does look like she said yes. The other game on Saturday saw Arsenal use all of their weapons to gun down a Liverpool side that has been in good form. Sunday started with a sadness for Spurs as they lost their 5th WSL match running, 2-0 away at West Ham. The big match of the weekend was City versus Chelsea, the league leaders coming back from a goal down to win match 3 out of 4. Brighton almost came back from 3-0 down at the King Power, but as we know, Foxes never quit. And finally, Villa continued their torrid run with a 4-0 loss at home to Man United, which means 6 losses in a row now for the Villains. But we're going to start the pod talking about England. So yesterday, Sarina Wiegman announced her England squad for the upcoming fixtures. And I just wanted to touch on it a little bit because, there's a lot of players in there that you would expect to see in there. Obviously, Charlie's favourite, Mary Earps, is obviously still holding her place. Could never drop her, could they? But there were a few inclusions that I wasn't necessarily expecting to see. I'm excited to see people like Maisie Simons and how they get on. But I know you two are, especially Charlie, are much more invested in England than I am. How do you feel about the England squad?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, I think there's a lot in there that you wouldn't necessarily be surprised with. I think Maisie Simons is probably an inclusion because we're missing a few options there. So obviously Georgia Stanway and Ruby Mace. So like, I know how familiar people are with what's going on with Ruby Mace, but obviously as Leicester fans, we can fill you in. It was a bit of a scare when she went off against Chelsea. I think everyone thought she'd done her ACL. Turns out, thankfully, she hasn't, but she has been sidelined for a bit. So, I mean, I have seen her put an Instagram story out today with her with the boots on, running on grass. So, I mean, who knows when she'll be back or she'll be back for the Euros. I would hope so. I feel like it's good to see Frank Kirby back, and it's good to see Keaton back as well. I think we spoke about Keaton on our podcast this week and how she'd had a really good game, which I'm sure we'll get into, against Chelsea. And obviously she's had a bit of a tough season, obviously dropped out of the senior squad, was in the under-23 squad. But so it's great to see her back. But I think for me, I'm still a bit confused about the defender situation. We seem to be like, let's just call up as many centre-backs as possible. but have like minimal fallback options. So I don't know why Gabby George hasn't been recalled. I'm not sure. And then obviously just being completely biased, I would love to see Asmita Ali given a shot at some point as well. I think she's having a fantastic season. We've seen her play both left and right back comfortably. And I just think that would be a really valuable asset to have in the squad. But I think, yeah, largely considering the injuries that we've got, I think I'm not massively surprised by anybody that's been called up or not been called up.
Yeah, I'd echo all of that. I think something I'm curious to see is, as Charlie just mentioned there, we do have about 75% of the squad is centre backs apparently. So it would be really interesting to see if perhaps we're going to see a renaissance of the Leah Williamson in midfield experiment, which, I mean, she kind of got moved into centre back by necessity just before last Euros, and obviously we know that went pretty well, and she's kind of been there ever since, barring the timeline she had out while she was injured. But yeah, I just think that midfield is obviously starting to look very, very. I don't know if I go so far as to call it thin, but I think certainly it's lacking physicality. As Charlie's mentioned there, I think you get a lot of that from Stanway and a lot of energy, which you don't necessarily get from Kira Walsh. I think Ruby Mace, yeah, obviously again we are biased, but I think this season we've kind of seen her offer something which I don't think we really have much of elsewhere in the England squad. So I do wonder if we're going to see Williamson in midfield again, just as a kind of a sort of auxiliary, proper, like kind of defensive destroyer, whereas Walsh is more of a deep line playmaker. But yeah, interested to see what Serena does, and if Williamson doesn't play in midfield, I'm going to assume that's because she has like advanced medical reports and knows everyone is going to be absolutely fine for the Euros, and no one can persuade me otherwise.
I think I agree with the Williamson point. I did think that when I saw the squad, because even just visually, if you look at the graphic that they've put up, the amount of defenders just seems huge compared to the midfield, even the midfield and the forwards combined. So there's 12 players that they class as midfield and forwards, and 9 defenders, as well as 4 keepers. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see William in midfield. I think probably if you're looking at your strongest midfield, it's probably Clinton and Walsh. If you're going like a 4-2-3-1, but we'll have to wait and see. Maisie Simons is obviously in there for a reason. She's done well in the under-23s, and sort of been, I guess, the first player to come up given the injuries. I think Laura Blickett-Brown is sort of in a similar boat to Ruby Mace, where if it wasn't for the fact she's injured, I'd expect her to be in the squad as well. I think they're both Blinkilde-Brown and Mace are kind of, if they're fit, players I'd expect to go to the Euros, but probably won't start, probably won't get many minutes, that kind of thing. It'll be interesting to see what happens still as well, because you've obviously still got players like Katie Zellum that are now obviously the other side of the pond. Probably don't get watched quite as much potentially, although saying that, people like Esme Morgan and Morehouse are still in there. So we'll just have to wait and see what comes. I'm really enjoying the fact Nikita Paris is still in there. I'm not sure that would have happened if Beth England was still fit. I think there might have been an idea to give one a chance now and one a chance in the last international break, which is obviously Nikita Paris, and one a chance this time, although obviously Beth England's now injured. But Paris is a good player. I don't have a qualm with her keeping her place. And it's looking good. It's looking like a decent squad to take on Belgium, who aren't terrible, but you would think England, with that squad, if they play the way they can play, should have enough quality to brush them aside.
Well, yeah, just obviously again as Leicester fans, we are slightly biased because we've got 2 players in the Belgium team. So if things do really go pear shaped for England, we've got that to fall back.
We'll just switch allegiance halfway through.
We'll start speaking Flemish and go from there.
Didn't Yanis Cayman? Did she win Goal of the Month?
Yeah.
So we may see a bit of a screamer somewhere. We'll wait and see what comes. But let's move on to the WSL games. Obviously, that's what we talk about in this pod. I'm going to start off with the first match of the weekend, which was sort of Saturday lunchtime-ish. Everton 2, Palace 0. I don't think I actually mentioned that in the sort of little intro bit because I just spoke about Rikke Madsen. Obviously, like I said, she's her first match coming back from pregnancy and was proposed to on the pitch after the game. I am wondering how long her, was boyfriend, now fiance, has had that ring, because he's probably been waiting for a chance where A, she's played because she was subbed on, and B, they win the game to make this proposal. If she had been sat on the bench the whole game and Palace won 1-0, it probably would have been a bit of a different look. But no, congratulations to them. They look very happy, and the whole squad looked very pleased for them as well. And I think Brian Sorensen said that he is, him and his partner are expecting a child as well after the game, which is always nice news as well. For Palace, not quite so much of a good day. Obviously, they lost this 2-0. They have never beaten Everton. That stat sounds really major, but they've only played twice, both in the WSL this season. The last one was a draw, and this one obviously was an Everton win. It's Everton's 5th win in 10 games. And they did see someone on X, I can't remember who it was now, apologies for not shouting you out properly. But Everton now have the 4th best form in the WSL since November the 8th. They've taken from 11 games, they've taken 17 points, which is better than Man City, which really shocked me. I know there's obviously Man City have had injuries. They've lost Lauren Hemp in that time, Alex Greenwood, and Bunny Shaw spent a bit of time out. But I wasn't expecting Everton to be the side that would be ahead of them. They're in a really good vein of form at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for me comes down to the January that they had. They had an absolutely incredible transfer window in January. They brought in some brilliant players like Gargo. Like, she's just looking like an absolute revelation. And I think it's enabled. Like, I never really understood why they were playing Katja Snoyce up front. Didn't seem like her natural position, and they've sort of slotted her in behind Gargo instead, and it just seems to have unlocked her as well. And then obviously they're bringing in like Hayley Ladd to like shore up the midfield as well and pair alongside Matt's favourite Claire Wheeler, who I'm sure will be getting a mention in a minute. And then I think, it's just sort of, and then I think they've been getting some players back from injury, like someone like Sarah Holmgaard, I think was sort of unavailable potentially at the start of the season. And they're just clicking. And it's going really well. And I'm really jealous.
Yeah, I think you touched on it there, Sam. I think it's a testament to how far they've come this season and how their form's turned around, because it wasn't that long ago it felt like Everton and Leicester were kind of locked in this who can score the least, and it's like, oh well, they've scored more than us, but it's one of them was an own goal, and there was that long period when they hadn't an Everton player hadn't put the ball in the net and all that stuff, and it's to go from that to, I know it was Palace they played this weekend, but it's to go from that to a situation where they're winning 3-0 and no one's really batting an eyelid is remarkable, really. I think Brian Sorensen deserves a lot of credit because I think a lot of people were sort of thinking he was probably not quite getting it done, and then obviously they had the horrible injuries with the ACLs over the summer and the start of the season. But I think super impressed with what they're doing. I think you're just on the form point as well. It's very interesting that I think it's almost like a counterpoint to Spurs and I think a lesser degree Brighton, where because they had that slow start, everyone's sort of a bit surprised about where they now are and how they're playing. But it's they don't have the optics of that, like the first impression from the start of the season. But they are as you say, bang in form. They obviously beat Man City before they had this amazing window where they've added Gargo and Hayley Ladd and a bunch of other players who definitely just improved them. And I think exciting times for Everton, particularly with the new stadium on the horizon as well, and chat that they might just get given Goodison Park as well, which would be pretty amazing.
And you got through all of that without mentioning Claire Wheeler.
Yeah, I can't believe it. There seems to be a really good buzz around Everton at the moment, I feel like, with the fans and things, and they definitely need to upgrade from Walton Hall Park, because as much as it's nice to have their little home as such, just to stay in the same place all the time, they would obviously much rather stay at home in a big stadium like Goodison. rather than staying at Walton Hall Park. I always think it just looks a little bit budget. But yeah, you're so right in the goal scoring. In their first 6 games this season, they scored 1 goal, which was at home to West Ham. Whereas since Christmas, in the 7 games they've played, they've only had 1 game where they haven't scored, which was ironically against West Ham. Yeah, they are much more of a goal scoring machine. I think the difference in this game was largely the goalkeepers, because both sides created quite a similar amount of XG, 0.3 difference, 1.4 for Everton, and obviously they've scored 3 goals. Palace got 1.1 XG and didn't score any. I don't think that's necessarily too much down to the striking, as much as the goalkeeping. Courtney Brosnan, I've said this for a while, and I'm going to have to keep saying it because she keeps proving me right. I think is the best keeper in the bottom half. Whereas Crystal Palace have 2 keepers that they've sort of switched between, and I don't think either of them are WSL standard, unfortunately. And I think these are the sort of games where that just kind of shows. So not looking good for Palace. Obviously, they would have wanted, well, I won't spoil the result later on, but they could have got out of the relegation zone if they'd won this game, and they probably would have earmarked it, maybe a few months ago anyway, as the sort of game that they could win. But last night, Everton win again, moving up the table, doing really well. I'm really impressed by their sort of recruitment in January and what they've done with it. I think a few teams recruited in January, Leicester are a good example as well, but just haven't quite had the same impact from the players. That happens sometimes. Sometimes you hit the nail on the head, you get the jackpot. Sometimes you don't. You can't expect it. You can't know that until the players come in, because it seemed like, and we'll get to it a bit more later, but it seemed like Leicester made some good signings in January, and yeah, it's just not quite worked out as well as Everton's has. But let's move on to the other Merseyside side that played also on Saturday, and a match I was at and enjoyed quite a lot. It was Arsenal 4, Liverpool 0. Arsenal's 5th win in a row at home, and the first team to score 4 in 5 consecutive home games in the WSL. That is obviously like a league record. The match started off really dull. Within the first 10 minutes, there was Mexican waves, which is never a good sign. But goals from Caitlin Ford, Mariana Caldente, and 2 own goals from a very unfortunate Jasmine Matthews that was just trying to block some crosses, meant that, 4 goals for Arsenal. Marnham almost got on the score sheet twice as well. She hit the post twice. But I think Mariana Caldente was probably my player of the match in this one, because she just seemed to... She didn't play in the same position she always does. Sometimes she sort of plays in that number 10. She quite often plays out wide on the left. This one, she sort of played in more of a holding role, kind of on the left side of the midfield, more often than not. But yeah, filled in really well, and she just looks like a really good footballer. And yeah, is the difference, I think, between teams like in the top 4 and outside, is having players like her. Did you see any of this game?
Yep, we watched the entire thing, yep. Before we get into the detail, something's been driving me insane, and I'm hoping you might know. Do you know why Arsenal were wearing red socks instead of white ones? It was distracting me the whole way through.
I don't, but I don't mind it. I think kind of what match it was. There was a match a few weeks ago where Arsenal women wore... They might have even been Champions League game. They wore full red. So it was red top, red shorts, and red socks. And I thought that looks so good. And I was kind of like, I wish the men did that as well, because it actually looks a lot better. I don't know why they've made the change. Obviously, they don't always wear red shorts. There's been a big sort of campaign alongside that as well with Ariel, which is good to see. But no, I don't know why they've made the change.
So I just thought you might have some inside track on why they're...
I was like,
I'm sure something doesn't look right with this visual. But no, as you say, it was... I think they were just from a disappointing result in the FA Cup, and then disappointing result in the Champions League. Obviously conditions playing into that, we will say. I think obviously it was... I think they were just back in their rhythm, finding their little triangles, finding the balls into the channels, and lots of joy down the right-hand side. I think Chloe Kelly looked really good as well. I think she just, like, every time... It's great to see, from an England perspective as well, like every time she gets on the pitch, she's just hungry to get a goal and make an impact. But like you said, like Mariona Caldente is just different gravy, and she like. I think when she hit that strike and it went in, I was like, "Oh, stop it! That's disgusting." Just like, yeah, she's just ridiculous. So I think when they play her in the middle, I think you see the difference. Because like obviously she's such a good player, she can do a job out wide, obviously, but I think in the middle, that's where the difference is. Because she just unlocks something different, but she's like I say, she's just next level.
Yeah, I think the teams that play like a low block against Arsenal, which it varies, some teams do, some teams don't. Liverpool definitely set out to do that from the start. And when you've got a low block, I think you want her a bit deeper so that she can try and pick the lock, I guess.
Yeah.
Pick the passes through it. Yeah, so I thought it was a good decision from Rene.
Obviously, as well, that the low block certainly last season was Arsenal's Achilles heel. Famously, they beat Chelsea, beat Man City, and yet came unstuck against like West Ham. You're just kind of sitting deep and frustrating them. And yeah, just I think Caldente has obviously got a lot of experience with that with Barcelona in Liga F, where pretty much week in week out has been historically an exercise for Barcelona in how can we, okay, here's a new defence, let's unpick them, with teams not really showing that much ambition to attack them. So I think, yeah, in terms of recruitment, we obviously knew how good she was, but I agree. I think having her just in the middle, orchestrating things, maybe picking passes that other players don't quite see, or sort of not necessarily resorting to what we saw a lot under Idavar, where you'd have the defence kind of parked in the box, and then Arsenal kind of encircling the opponent's box and just sort of passing it back and forth in a sort of semicircle, not really ever sort of threatening to penetrate through that defence. And I think Caldente is. She's a player where, it's like, okay, if you're going to sit in a low block, well, I'm just going to sort of, I don't even know how you'd really describe the goal she scored at the weekend. It wasn't, I guess she kind of finessed it into the top corner. It was sort of, wasn't quite a chip. It wasn't a lob, but it was just like,
she Mariona'd it.
She Mariona'd it, absolutely.
Yeah, it was sort of like, it was a cross that, I don't know if there was a bit of a shove or something, but the Liverpool defender seemed to misjudge it, and she sort of took it down with one touch on her right foot and then curled it with her left. Very much if anyone listening plays any FIFA or EFC, it's very much an R1 or an RB kind of finish. Obviously, Arsenal have got, well, this will be very soon to be out of date football news because, or football opinion anyway, because the game kicks off in an hour and a half, so it may well have started, probably has started by the time that this pod is out, but something I was quite intrigued about was the fact that Arsenal's front four all did a full 90. So Alessia Russo, Frida Arnhem behind, and then Kelly and Caitlin Ford on the wings. Although Caitlin Ford did end up at right back for quite a lot of the game, for about the last half an hour or so, which was kind of due to injuries. But I was quite surprised at that because I thought the players, especially Russo, Kelly, and Ford, might be the kind of players that would get a bit of a rest ahead of Real Madrid. Obviously, they've got a 2-0 deficit. It will be quite a different game. Real Madrid's won on a shit pitch in Madrid at the sort of like second grounds that Real have, because they're not allowed to play at the Bernabeu until they win something. They won El Clasico for the first time this weekend as well, which again was on a bit of a shit pitch. Not necessarily because the pitch was already shit, but just because it was in the middle of basically a flood. So Real Madrid aren't going to have that luxury this time. It's at the Emirates. It's been a nice day, or at least, I mean, I live about 80 miles away and it's been quite nice. So hopefully it's nice at the Emirates as well. So I'm interested to see how that goes tonight. But yeah, like I say, the kickoff's in about an hour and a half, so there's no point in us going into it too much. Let's move on to Sunday's games. I'm going to start off with, I hasten to call it a derby, but two London teams facing against each other. West Ham beat Spurs 2-0. West Ham move above Spurs into 8th in the WSL table now, and they're unbeaten in 4 at home, which has sort of crept up on me a little bit. Not that West Ham are necessarily up to 8th, but that Spurs are below that. I know Spurs aren't quite the same team as they are when they've got Beth England in the side, but this seems to be quite a big drop from them at the moment.
Yeah, I think we kind of mentioned this on our podcast. I promise I'm not just trying to siphon listeners off or anything like that. But yeah, I think Spurs the fact they've been in sixth for so long has been papering over quite a few cracks. Maybe not with the Spurs fans themselves, but in terms of, you know, people like us who we're not following Spurs. You just kind of you glance at the table and think, oh, they're sixth. That's about where we expected based on last season. But yeah, obviously the mid pack in that table is now incredibly bunched up. And as you say, Sam, there it's you know it's only taken a couple of results and suddenly they've plummeted. And without wanting to jump ahead into the preview for the upcoming fixtures, they're playing Leicester this weekend, and if Leicester beat them, Leicester will go above them as well. So yeah, it's suddenly like the optics of that are, I think, to be fair, reflecting where Spurs are as a team right now. I don't feel like, you know, it's a sort of, it's a shock and that's undeserved. They've been unlucky. I feel like they've been kind of getting away with it with that sixth position for quite a while now, and I feel like this is, you know, that I think this was their fifth loss on the bounce. So yeah, it's looking. It's starting to look pretty desperate, I think. You know, Robert Villahelm was getting asked before the West Ham game, you know, questions about whether he was feeling the pressure, whether he was worried about his job, which are never great signs. Like you say, I feel like with Beth England out of that team, you start to really struggle to see where the goals are coming from. Martha Thomas hasn't scored in, I don't know how many. I know she hasn't scored this season in the league, but
I don't believe she's scored since November 2023.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that's right. Because I did notice the other day as well that she is the player that's, I think she's A, had the most shots, and B, accumulated the most XG in the WSL without scoring this season.
Yeah, and you know she had a good chance at the weekend, you know, and it looked like the confidence is completely shot there. She doesn't look like, you know, I don't want to say, I was going to say she doesn't look hungry, which is wrong. I feel like if anything, she's kind of gone too far in the other direction. She just looks desperate. She looks completely bereft of confidence, and it looks like everything, you know, rather than just sort of taking a breath and relaxing and, you know, as you see the best strikers do in terms of just, you know, it looks natural to them if you think like a Bunny Shaw or something like that. Whereas, yeah, Thomas, it looks like she's trying so hard, it's almost coming to the detriment of any goals. And to be fair, I'm not trying to pick on Martha Thomas. I think that's pretty much true of a lot of Spurs' attacking players this season, barring England. You know, I don't believe Jess Naz has scored this season. I think there's a few players who I think they beat Palace 4-0 on the opening day of the season, and then since then haven't got a goal or assist, and it's not looking great.
Yeah, it's looking dicey. I think Jesnaz has scored. She scored on the opening day against Palace and then hasn't scored since, which,
right, yeah.
Back on it now is sort of, if you're going to score at any time, it's against a Palace side that is brand new to the league and hadn't gelled together yet. Also, apologies to Martha Thomas, there is someone that has taken more shots, Jordan Nobbs, without scoring this season. I'll correct there before I get any hate through from any Spurs fans. But yeah, the other thing that I wanted to mention was a stat that I heard a friend of the pod, Jamie Spanger, mention on her podcast, Halfway Line, which I was listening to earlier, which was that I've got to make sure I get this right now. No player has scored from open play for Spurs other than Bethany England since I think it was November. So they've scored a few. Obviously, Olivia Holt scored a great free kick, or they've scored from a corner, that sort of thing. But they haven't scored from open play, or someone other than Bethany England or own goal haven't scored from open play, which is a bit of a damning stat. And is, like you say, the sort of thing that means that Robert Villahelm is going to get asked questions about his job. I'd like to see him keep his job, not just because as a Arsenal fan I'm seeing Spurs do badly, but more because Robert Villahelm, I think, seems like a really nice guy. So that's one thing that I just like to see, you know, people that seem like good eggs do well, but also that he seems to improve players so well. I saw an interview in January with Grace Clinton. So bearing in mind, she's had another 6 months back at Man United now, or something, you know, around 6 months. She was asked who her favourite coach has been. And she said Robert Villahelm, because of how good he was at improving players. And it really helped her move on to that next step, which I think you can see from how well she did at Spurs last season, is now doing at Man United. And yeah, I think it's important for Spurs if they want to end up challenging that top four. I think the easiest way they're going to be able to do that is to get good players in and someone like Robert Villaham to make them better. It may just be they have to invest maybe in better players, maybe in more coaches, things like that, to actually get more goal scorers, basically, because they haven't scored a terrible amount of goals. They've scored 20 goals this season. It's more than Liverpool, who are 6th, more than Everton, who are 7th. But yeah, they just concede too much and they're over-reliant on one player, which is never going to go well for any team, really, is it? Let's move on to what I thought was going to be the biggest game of the weekend. Annoyingly, with the result, it probably is a bit more business as usual. It is City 1, Chelsea 2. A very Jekyll Hyde performance would be, as someone that's played Football Manager for many years, that's the phrase that's stuck in my head. But a very much a game of two halves. City were much the better team in the first half. Caroline looked fantastic. Obviously, Jess Park had a goal ruled out as well, which I don't think should have been ruled out. I think if the ref just played on for 3 seconds, that would have played out fine. But Chelsea got 2 goals in the second half. Aggie Beaver-Jones getting one with a really well-taken goal, and then Ashley Lawrence putting in a cross that Erin Cuthbert headed in, I think, in the 91st minute, which means Chelsea are back on their winning run, as they are. They've still not lost. They've still only drawn 2 out of 17 WSL games. Still yet to lose in the WSL, as I said. But yeah, this wasn't a result I expected. I thought City were actually going to be the team to win this game. So I thought they'd prioritise this game a bit more. So yeah, I'm kind of happy as an Arsenal fan to see City not quite as much in the race for the top 3, but at the same time, it's almost a bit disheartening to see Chelsea just steamroll every team that comes in their path.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I've seen it a few times, actually. People say this. It feels like both teams have won the wrong game. So, like, obviously, it's just this bizarre situation that we're in where they're playing each other 4 times in a row in 3 different competitions. And it feels like, yeah, like last Wednesday, I think it was, when they played in the Champions League and City, like, it was an incredible performance, but Chelsea just weren't up to the races at all. And then, and then obviously they're going into tomorrow with, a 2-0 lead, City, which Chelsea have got to try and overturn, which, like I say, if that Chelsea from the second half of the league game turns up, then I'd back them to overturn that, but who knows? But like, yeah, it's almost like they could have done with that fight that they had in the second half of the league game, in the Champions League game, because their league position is pretty safe. Sorry to say that to an Arsenal fan, but their league position is pretty cemented. So the Champions League is the big one, the one that Sonia Bonpastor has been bought in to win, the one that they've spent millions of pounds on players to win. So I'm just like, where was that on, like, in the Champions League game? Where was that sort of fight and that, and I think she took the opportunity to heavily rotate in that first half, and which I think was to their detriment. It just meant they weren't quite clicking, and City could just dominate. And like I say, Caroline was causing all sorts of problems. I think I said Niamh Charles looked like her head was in a blender, like genuinely couldn't deal with her. And she looks like an absolute revelation, Caroline. Like, she's going to be unreal. But yeah, I don't know. And then they bring out the big guns in the second half, like, Erin Cuthbert, who, gets the winning goal and stuff. And obviously you can bring on players like Ramirez, and City are looking at their bench, which is properly thin at the moment. And it's just like, obviously it was almost a flip of what City were able to in the Champions League game as well. Like, obviously it was 0-0 at half time, but then they brought on Miedemar, who changed the game. But obviously City weren't able to do that because she was already on the pitch. So, but yeah, it's, like I say, it just feels like in the wider narrative of, like, these two teams and where they are with their seasons, they could have probably done with swapping those results over.
Yeah, I think if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be wanting the Champions League one to be the one that I'd won. and if you had to lose one of them to lose the league game. But then if Chelsea end up winning tomorrow night, Thursday, it won't matter at all because they'll have won as such all 3 ties, even if it's not been all 4 sets in 90 minutes. Sorry, go on, Matt.
No, I was just going to say as well, obviously just the League Cup being thrown in there as well. Chelsea obviously have won so much over the years. I don't really think they were that worried, whereas City, they don't have that same winning pedigree, not over the last few years anyway. And I think a piece of silverware would have really not gone amiss. So yeah, I think absolutely at the if City can grind out a 0-0 tomorrow night, there may be a sort of Nick Cushing might whip out the Subway Cup and just be like, "Do you want this?" And you give us the 3 points, and you guys go and play. Is it Barcelona? They'll play in the semi-final.
Likely, likely.
Yeah, obviously it depends who goes through, but yeah, one of
Barca and Wolfsburg, I think.
Barca and Wolfsburg. That's it. Yeah,
but
Barcelona.
Yeah. And they're playing at home, aren't they, next leg? So
yeah, so it's probably pretty much done. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Let's move on to the bit that I'll probably have to restrain you to a little bit from talking about because it's Leicester 3, Brighton 2. Leicester did go 3-0 up in this game and have a penalty that they didn't score, but Brighton came back. Couldn't quite get it over the line. Obviously, only got 2 goals back, including a penalty. There was a bit of like a strange run of what was happening with the penalties in this game because obviously Brighton gave away a penalty for, I think it was Yuka Mimiki took it.
Yeah.
Didn't score. And then Yuka Mimiki gave away a penalty, which Brighton then did score. And obviously they got one other as well. But Leicester actually have the best home form in the WSL outside of the top 3. So even including Man City, 3 wins on the bounce and unbeaten in 4 at home. It's looking pretty good for Leicester, isn't it?
Yes. yeah. No, it's it's a huge win for us. I think Amandine Mikel said after the game, we're only 6 points clear. Next weekend it could be back to 3, and then it's 1 result and all this stuff. But I think the 3 points at the weekend for us is kind of, you're now in the territory of having to do some quite convoluted maths if you're a Palace fan to see how you could catch us. I think Palace have got they've still got to play us, and they've got West Ham, who are, I think, the worst away team in the WSL, both at home. So you could see them winning both of those, but because of the goal difference, even if we lost, we being Leicester, if Leicester lost every single game, they're still having to breach quite a big gap in goal difference, and that would then therefore mean they need to take a point or points off one of City, Chelsea, or Arsenal. And even if that all happens, you're then also, assuming Villa pick up 5 points or probably needing 6 points to overtake Leicester as well. So it's, we're officially not saying we're safe. We said this on our podcast as well because we cannot say we're safe. But I think it's a huge win, and I think Brighton, they're not obviously in the position that Spurs are in terms of tumbling down the table. I think they're pretty well ensconced in 5th, but I think they have only won 1 league game since November, so slightly worrying, not worrying times, because I think given their improvement overall this season, you have to say it's still a very good year for them. But I think they'll be looking at that thinking there's plenty to work on. I said before the game, as we were driving there and we were both trying to calm ourselves down and convince ourselves it wasn't going to be a disaster, I do feel like our setup suited us very well for that match. I think Brighton like to play out from the back, have a lot of possession, all this kind of stuff, whereas we don't really want the ball. Generally, we try and move as fast forward as we can, as quick as we can, and just get it down the flanks, whip the ball in, and we now actually have players attacking and standing in the box to then score, which is a missing piece of the puzzle for the first half of the season. But I think it could have and probably should have been more comfortable. But yeah, I again biased. You mentioned Courtney Brosnan earlier as the best keeper in the bottom half. I think Janina Leipzig in the 101st minute or whenever that final effort went in might have something to say about that, because it was an unbelievable save and she was there when we needed her.
Yeah,
We might find Everton are going to be in the top half anyway, so that best keeper in the bottom half is going to be up for grabs. Yeah, I did just want to say as well on you said about the game being sort of set up well for you because of how much Brighton liked to have the ball. Brighton actually had 70% of the possession in this game, and still, you don't often see teams have 70% possession and concede 3 goals, never mind lose a game. So yeah, it definitely did go well. And yeah, I'll say it as a non-biased person in this realm. I do think Leicester are safe because there's a couple of games that I think Palace could do quite well in. There's what was it, West Ham and Leicester, one after the other, both at Palace. And you said West Ham are the worst away record in the league. Leicester are second worst, that is. So Palace will be eyeing those games up, and if they don't get 6 out of 6 in that, they've got no chance of catching you. I think they probably need to win at least one of those to be able to catch Villa, but let's see how that goes. Go on, Charlie.
Yeah, no. I was just gonna say, just on the game generally, I think that first half, us going 3-0 up, I think that was just a perfect case study of what Amandine Mikel wants to do with the team. Like, that's exactly how we want to play, and it went perfectly. And I think it was just interesting because we sit right behind the dugouts in our season ticket seats. You could see Amandine and her assistant manager, they were coaching the press at every moment in that first half, and it was, I think it was, that first half was a real tactical masterclass from Amandine, and I think, to be fair, I think Brighton adapted well in the second half. I think they were sort of playing more of a back five, or back three, I suppose, in the first half, and then they brought Seike on for Olish Lagers, and she sort of joined that, sort of made like more of a front four with Kirby and Hayley and Paris, and that's when we started to get really sort of hammered, and like get all the waves of pressure. And yeah, I think that they just did that, and then they can bring on like I can never say this, Agyemang as well, who is like really tricky to deal with. Like, she's an incredible player. She's going to be a future superstar, I think. And yeah, I think they just adapted really well, and I think I was personally, like, as much as it was incredibly tense, and obviously probably could have done with Yuka Mimiki burying that penalty, but I think it was a testament to our mentality and our character that we dug in and did manage to take the 3 points, because I think we could have easily just collapsed after that penalty went in, because it was, I said to Matt and my cousin, like, Frank Kirby's not going to miss that. Frank Kirby's not missing that penalty. No way. And yeah, I think, like I say, after that went in, obviously they had a few chances after that, including the best save I've ever seen from Yanni. So I think yeah, it's a testament to our character, I think.
Yeah, I think Leicester are really good at that, sort of holding on to what they've got late in the game, and just seeing it out. I don't think there's a stat that I don't know if you've seen this, that I've sort of put in the notes of the show, but Leicester haven't scored in the last 30 minutes of a game this season, which I don't think is an accident. I think there's probably quite I think you either are playing against a team where it's unlikely that you're going to be able to get something out of the game, like Chelsea's and Man United's and things like that just have a really good defence. But I think there's also those games like this one where you get ahead. I think it was the same. I went to the Liverpool game at home, and you get ahead, and then it's like, right, we're not losing this, and you're actually really good at defending. Even a 1-goal lead, you're really good at defending that rather than trying to make 2 or 3. But yeah, so I'm going to cap it there. We'll move on. Sorry to not make it half an hour of Leicester as you requested, but we'll move on to the final game of the weekend. I don't think there's too much to say about this one. Villa 0, Man United 4. Villa are in the worst form in the league because it's 6 losses in a row for them now. the longest losing streak in the league. Man United looking in a much better position with a 4-0 win, another clean sheet for them, another lot of fantasy points for me, captaining Maya Letitia, gets in. But yeah, it's not looking good for Villa, and I think that they are in real danger of dropping out now, especially with those 2 games for Palace that we mentioned earlier on.
Yeah, for sure. I think. I think. Sorry to bring it back to Leicester, but I promise it's relevant. When they came to play us at the King Power a few weeks ago, and we won 3-0. Just to drop that in there, I think we've said multiple times since, we couldn't believe how little they were up for that. Like, it's like we turned up realizing that was a 6-pointer, and they didn't. It's like they just came and were like, we'll probably win this. And it was just a completely passive performance. And I'm not seeing any fight from them. And it's so bizarre. Like, and I saw it was like Anita Asante on Boots, Balls and Bras. I'm glad I got that out.
Well
done. I think I would. Made a really good point about a lot of those players in that squad probably haven't been in a relegation scrap before. And if you think about the more experienced players that they have in that squad, like Nobbs and Daly, like, I know Nobbs, I don't know a lot about her career, but I know she spent most of her time at Arsenal. So you can't imagine she's been in many relegation scraps. And then Rachel Daly spent most of her career in the WSL, where they don't have relegation. So, like, and I just, like I say, Anita Asante also mentioned, like, where there doesn't seem to be that sort of coming from the leaders in the team of, like, that sort of, like, instilling that fight in their teammates. And I think it speaks to something like Jill Boyings is, like, when Rachel Daly gets subbed off, Jill Boyings, who's like a new signing pretty much, like, came in at the start of the season, is wearing the armband. I think it's a bit weird.
Am I right in thinking she's on loan as well?
She might be. I'm not sure.
I think she might be.
What is it? Has a lone player ever had the captain's armband before? That's bizarre.
I feel like I've definitely seen that happen before. Yeah, but it's rare.
I know.
She is on loan from Bayern Munich.
Yeah, and
I thought she was a permanent signing. That's even more strange from my perspective. But I don't know. I just feel like players that you would expect, like I say, players you would expect to see that leadership from, like Rachel Daly. I feel like, I don't know if she's quiet quitting or something, but like she's just not there for me. Like her usual.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not suggesting obviously that Rachel Daly would quiet quit, but like, I don't know. It's weird.
The game Charlie just mentioned there, where we won 3-0, they took Daly off. We were 1-0 up at half time. I'm now calling Leicester we, by the way. All pretense of impartiality has fallen, but we were 1-0 up at half time, and then we scored twice in the first 5 minutes of the second half to go 3-0 up and effectively kill the game off. And then I think Arroyo took Daly off at about 55 minutes, and at the time I said, like, yeah, this is a self-preservation thing. They know the game's gone. Why have Rachel Daly run herself into the ground for 35 minutes? And when you can have her fresh for, at that point, they had upcoming games against people like Palace. But I agree, it just feels like something is missing there. And as Charlie's just said, whether it's a bunch of players have been brought in thinking this is an upwardly mobile club with a project and a philosophy, and we're gonna, there's going to be a lot of winning, and that's what we're here for. And suddenly you kind of what you were saying about us, Sam, in terms of that kind of, willingness to think, okay, we're 1-0 up, let's just defend, and backing ourselves to do that. I feel like that, Villa are almost the complete opposite. I just don't think they've got that fight. And without wanting to step on your toes, Sam, in terms of stats, I did look at earlier, and Villa have, they are bottom of the table in terms of tackles won this season, whereas West Ham are first, Leicester are second, and I think Palace are fifth. So it's just doesn't really feel like they're in any way, shape or form set up for this. And whereas I think there are players out there who, you look at someone like Alison Swaby, who's just gone into Crystal Palace. She is also wearing the armband, but she just looks like an absolute rock at the back, like a battler. She looks like she's come in. She knows exactly what the brief is. It's keep this club in the WSL. Whereas Villa's players, it just doesn't really feel like anyone's thinking, okay, you know what, we're in the situation we're in. Grasp the nettle, okay, it's not going to be pretty. It's not what I signed up for, but I've got to do it. But it just doesn't really feel like that's coming through at the moment.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what they do if they stay up or if they don't. I'm intrigued to see what they do next year, because Talia Royer, I don't know too much about her career in Liga F, but by the sound of it, she did very well. And she's been out of work for 6 months while she was sort of waiting for the right opportunity, and now she seems to have got it. It's obviously not going too well, but I'm wondering if, when she's had a full pre-season and has got any signings that she wants to make and can make in the summer, then maybe we'll see a different kind of Aston Villa, because I thought under Robert DePauw that they looked I thought they always looked good, but they just didn't get it over the line. They never won games that I thought they deserved to do well in. They'd always seemed to play well, but come out with a draw or a loss. Whereas under Natalia Roy, I get the impression that more they have a few players that are trying, and they have a few players that, yeah, like you say, just haven't quite got the fight in them. Albeit there is still a player like Lucy Parker still managing to get her way into the Lionesses squad through her sort of defensive work. But yeah, it's not looking great for Villa. But those were the 6 games that happened this weekend. We will move on to talk about the games coming up quite briefly this weekend coming. So the first game is Manchester United against Everton. Everton's only ever win against Man United was back in December 2020 in the Conti Cup. Man United have won 11 of the 13 matches that these two teams have played since then, and the same fixture last season was a 4-1 Man United win. Everton are in good form, but is this a bit of a step too far for them, do you think, this weekend?
I think Man United at home this season is a tough one. I think obviously we know what their defence has been like, and as much as I think obviously, as we've already touched on, they've got players like Kelly Gargo and Tony Payne who I think will cause them some headaches. I think I can't see anything but a United win there.
I'm going to stick my neck on the line. This game, when I looked at the fixtures coming up, this stuck out to me as a potential banana skin for United. So I'm going to go against the grain. I just feel Everton, we know they can do that type of defending. We saw it at the Emirates earlier this season, where if they want to go low block, they can. I do think that you just mentioned Tony Payne and Gargo up front. I think it's, as we saw in that game they won against City, it was just like, back ourselves to defend. The onus is on you to attack. They're probably going to be, Man United 5, Everton 0 now. But this just it stuck out to me as one where, and maybe it's just me wearing Claire Wheeler tinted glasses because I think she'll be back. But yeah,
I think it's going to be a not necessarily an easy win, but I do think it's going to be a Manchester United win. I can see this being like a 1-0 or a 2-1, that kind of thing. The next one is Brighton against Man City. City won both of these matches last season, winning the match away at Brighton 4-1. Brighton have actually never beaten City at home. They have away, but have never beaten them at home. The only time they've beaten them away was 1-0 in the WSL back in November 2023. How do you think this one's going to go? I think this could be a bit of a sort of mental battle for City, because they'll have obviously had 4 games against Chelsea, 4 really important games. And no matter how tomorrow night's game goes, I think there's going to be a bit of a mental state of, right, we've got through that patch now, we've done that bit. And are they just going to take their foot off the gas a bit too much? I think they're probably a little bit lucky that they're playing against a Brighton. If they're playing against someone like Man United or Arsenal or one of the more informed teams like Leicester, they might have a bit of a different path. But yeah, Brighton, like you said earlier, have only won once since November. So I'm a bit unsure about how this is going to go. My brain says just to go for City because City are a team with so much quality, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Brighton get something out of this.
I agree. I've sort of written down that I think it might be a bit of a basketball game. I think both teams we've seen be very fragile defensively, and I think that's going to sort of, I don't know, I feel like it's going to be like that Arsenal game at the Joy Stadium where it was just like, down to the wire sort of. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of goals, and I think it's going to be like one goal in it, and I think City will just clinch it, but like I say, I think it'll be a close one with a lot of goals. That's my feeling.
I think City will scrape through in the Champions League, and then Fran Kirby will take her revenge on her former employer's vanquishers. I feel like, although we kind of talked Brighton down in the review of their game against Leicester, I do feel like their playing style is kind of suited to playing up against teams that are going to attack them, are going to also try and have the ball, that kind of thing. So, and we saw that in the game they recently drew against Chelsea, which obviously not many teams have been able to do. So, yeah, I can see it being a high scoring draw or something like that. I think City, as you say, Sam, they might just take their foot off the gas a little bit, or alternatively, they might be so relieved they're not having to play Chelsea again. It might kind of just give them a bit of a boost. I don't know, a bit of extra freedom. But yeah, I'm going for a score draw.
Interesting. I think I'm going to go for a 2-1 City win on that one. I can see Brighton getting on the score sheet, but I do think City are probably going to come out victors. That's a sensible one. A game that I don't think is going to be quite as close is Palace against Arsenal. They've only actually ever met twice. Once was back in May 2021 when Arsenal won 9-0 in the FA Cup, and the other one was earlier this season when Arsenal won 5-0 at home. So 14-0 to Arsenal over 2 games. This would be the first time that Arsenal have ever played away at Crystal Palace. And the other stat I wanted to bring out was that Arsenal have scored more goals in the last half an hour this season, 19 goals, than Palace have in the WSL in total, 15. So all of that seems like it's going to be a really one-sided game. Do you think it's going to be quite one-sided?
Yeah, I imagine so, yeah. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about that. I think, I don't know, Palace have got a lot of fight in them, and they are quite dangerous on the counter-attack. I thought that on Saturday. Like Larissé and Weirden look really, really quick, and I think, sorry Sam, Arsenal look very vulnerable on the transition at times. So maybe they could get a goal, but I think it's going to be a bit of an Arsenal running away with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with any of that. I think, we mentioned Arsenal's problems against the low block historically. Could I see Palace just going everyone behind the ball for 90 minutes and grinding out a 0-0? Strange things have happened, but I think chances are if Arsenal score early, that's it. It's curtains, I'd say.
Yeah, I can see this being probably, I'm actually going to go for the same scoreline as this weekend. I reckon this is going to be a 4-0 Arsenal win. I think it's going to be a comfortable. Palace can't do much about it. Arsenal are just really a team in a different space at the moment. Palace have come up and are trying to stay in, whereas Arsenal are a very established side with a lot more backing. So you just are going to have those better players. Let's go on to Liverpool against Villa. This one was 2-0 to Liverpool last season. Interestingly, a third of Villa's goals this season have come in the last 15 minutes. Although they haven't been scoring a lot recently, they've failed to score in 4 out of their 8 away games. And obviously, they're on a really bad losing streak, 6 in a row. Do you think this is going to be another loss for them? Do you think it's going to be a Liverpool win?
Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, I just can't see, certainly in that game, I can't see a way back for Villa. I just think, Liverpool are, other than, I think, obviously the result this weekend just gone, which I think Arsenal at the Emirates in the mood are a different beast. And there's not a lot many teams can do about that, if they're confronted with that sort of Arsenal team. I just think they're not going to be able get anything out of that, unfortunately. Like I say, it's one of them, isn't it? Anything can happen in football, and anything can happen in the WSL, except anyone beating Chelsea. But I don't know. I can't see it. I can't see it. What do you think, Matt?
I mean, Liverpool's home form has been a bit spotty. I know that there was the Everton game, there was that Palace game that they drew. But it feels we've talked about this a lot. Like it felt weirdly they needed to sack Matt Beard in order to kind of resurrect the Matt Beardness of the team, which has been. I don't have an explanation for why, but it just feels like Amber Whiteley has taken them back to basics, has got them, just it's not particularly fancy, but it's just, let's play to our strengths, let's fight, let's, back ourselves to defend when we need to. I think to be fair to Matt Beard, I think the return of Roman Haug has been big, because I feel like that's given Liverpool that focal point back that they can hit with long balls, and just made them an added set piece threat. I think she's in good form, and obviously having Smith rather than as a sort of lone striker trying to become like a one woman press, she's just kind of out wide doing what she does best. And I think Liverpool will back themselves to outfight Villa, which is mad to think given Villa are where they are and Liverpool are, generally pretty. Not very much to play for really, other than pride. But yeah, I think Liverpool. I've just said the home form's been bad, but they did beat United as well in the last home game. I know this one isn't at Anfield, but I think they'll really want to carry that momentum on, and that will be motivation enough to see them through to the win.
Yeah, I think Liverpool are going to. I mean, since Amber Whiteley's taken over, they've been in a really good vein of form, and like you say, Charlie, when Arsenal are at home at the Emirates and on form, there's not really much you can do about them. I know I was in the press conference after with Amber Whiteley, and she said that it wasn't necessarily anything that Liverpool had done wrong today. It was just Arsenal were too good. And I still think Liverpool are a pretty good side, and I think in this one we're probably going to see another scoreline similar to last season, the 2-0, something like that. I think Villa are going to struggle to score just generally, and I think Liverpool are looking really good. And their long ball game has been something that they've continued to do all season, whether they've had Roman Haug or not. It's been something they've continued to do. Rachel Laws, although I don't think she's the best keeper, she's really good with her distribution. So that's really important. She's really good with her long passes, and obviously now you've got Roman Haug up there as well. Happy days for them. It should be, hopefully for their sake, a relatively easy win for Liverpool. The penultimate game I want to talk about is the game that I think is going to be the closest one this weekend. I think it's probably going to be the most enjoyable game to watch for that reason as a neutral, which I know it's not you, but it's Leicester against Spurs. Spurs are not a team in good form, but they are unbeaten against Leicester in 8 matches. This game last season was 1-1. Yanis Cayman, who is obviously still at Leicester, scored the goal for you, whereas Kylian Bizet scored for Spurs, who is obviously not there. Leicester have actually never beaten Spurs at home. And yeah, it's one of those that the stats say that historically Spurs have got the advantage in this game. But if you look at the form of these two sides, Spurs have lost the last 5. Leicester have won the last 3 at home. It's looking like the form says it should be a Leicester win. How are you feeling about this game? Are you confident?
We're contractually not allowed to say anything positive about future games. If we win, we can say it was the greatest performance we've ever seen. But yeah, I don't think either of us is going to go out and say, yep, we're feeling really confident we're going to win. I do feel like I agree in that. I feel like if you ignore the historic results and just look at the form recently, I think the signs do point to us. I also feel like, similarly to the Brighton game, it is quite well set up for us. I mean, you mentioned earlier, Sam, about the fact we had 30% possession in that Brighton win. I looked it up earlier, and of our 4 wins we've had this season, we've had 37%, 33%, and 2 games with 30%. Spurs like the ball, try and play out from the back, don't like teams pressing them. It feels well set up for us. And as we've already mentioned, Spurs and their trouble scoring goals. I think if Beth England is fit, I'll be a lot more worried about their prospects. But yeah, I am. I think we're in good form. We've got players coming back from injury. I think something that's massive for Amandine Mikel is having competition in the squad. She's not a manager who likes to stick with the same first 11. She's made that very clear. She likes to basically pit players against each other and say, if I don't feel like you're delivering, we've got options. I'll play someone else. Obviously, in the first half of the season, she didn't really have that option because we didn't have anyone else. She didn't want to upset anyone too much because there was no other options. But now, we've got kind of options all over the pitch, really. And I feel like, I don't think she's going to make any major changes from the Brighton game because I think generally the performance was very good despite Brighton nearly coming back. But I do feel like, we've got a pretty deep bench now. There's a lot of players who I think I think there's just a good vibe around the team, and I think a lot of players are desperate to get on that pitch really and be a part of it. So whereas against Spurs, I don't feel like that's the case right now. I think they're shuffling the team a lot, but it's for different reasons. Just because Charlie's been saying this for a few weeks now that it doesn't feel like they know what the best combination of players is, and that it's not so much a competition thing as just why don't I try a fullback on the wing rather than Jess Naz or Hayley Rasso or something like that. It's I'd say cautiously optimistic, and that's as far as I'm willing to go at this point.
I think that's a fair way of putting it. I was just having a look at the sort of news around Bethany England, and it sounds like she's not out for the season, but she is unlikely to play this weekend. So yeah, there you go. There's a bit of an update for you.
Oh well, yeah, that does. Like, I think I would be most worried if, as much as I don't like to obviously hope that players are injured.
Yeah.
Of course not. But I would be most worried if England was back in that team because, the stats say it, don't they? She's literally I think she's probably keeping them afloat at the moment. So obviously she'll be a massive miss for them. And I never waver from my position as the eternal pessimist. Every single game that we've been to at the King Power that we've won this season, I've gone in and said we're going to lose this, except for the Palace game, which we managed, which I thought we would win and managed to throw one in. And as Amandine said, played our joker for the season. But I was looking earlier as well, and in the last 6 games, obviously, as we know, Spurs have lost 6 on the bounce now. They've only scored 2 goals in the last 6 games, whereas we scored 9. So, if you go in on that, I think, as particularly with what we managed to do against Brighton in the first half, I think you'd have to look at that and back us. But as I say, I feel like in some respects, Spurs are similar to Villa, where you're looking at the team and you're like, who's taking this ball by the horns? And other than
England, yeah,
who's taking this ball by the horns and bringing their teammates along with them? There is a bit of a sense of that sometimes when I look at that Spurs team. So I don't know. But again, as I say, I'm not willing to stick my neck on the line because anything can happen. And they managed to beat us when we were away. When we played them away, by not having a shot on target. So some freak own goal could happen again.
Yeah, we scored an own goal and then missed an open goal when attacking. So, we're owed one by the universe against Spurs. So, yeah.
And I think as well, I just wanted to circle back to what you said earlier, Sam, about, January for us. I think we brought in Olivia Clark as our second goalkeeper, which was obviously one of necessity because Kopp went to Spurs. Again, obviously hoping that she doesn't have a good game because I think I'm probably not out. It's not outrageous to say she's probably been their best player in the last. She's been there really. Yeah. I think, other than Beth England when she's played, but then we brought in Eric Stottier, who, hasn't scored yet, but we felt the impact of her in terms of her press and being able to hold the ball and bring other players in. But unfortunately, she picked up an injury in the last international break, so we've sort of not really seen her. She was on the bench on Sunday, but apparently we had 9 players on restricted minutes, just to add to the general hilarity of injuries that we've had this season. And we've also obviously got Carla Torres, who's this like exciting looking Colombian striker on loan as well, who we did see, but is not particularly physical. He's a bit more quick, so he's a slightly different profile. So I don't know. I feel like the signings that we brought in have helped other players more than they've, like, those, if that makes sense, like more than those players having impact themselves. They've been able to sort of either bring, like Matt said, inspire a bit of competition in the squad, or like say in the case of Eric Dottier, just being able to like lead the press and hold up the ball. And
she was a big part of that 3-0 win over Villa.
Yeah.
Although she didn't score, I think she really shook up that defence and kind of sort of pulverised it a bit for 20 minutes at the start of the game, and then that just softened them up for us to then score the 3 goals, basically.
Yeah, which sometimes what you need, you just need players to go through the right processes, even, and hopefully at the end of that you'll get the outcomes. I think that this will be a match where I'm going to put my neck on the line and say Spurs aren't going to score. Partly because Beth England sounds like won't be playing, but also that without her, they only really score set pieces, so corners and free kicks and things like that, which I feel like is something that Leicester are very good at defending against. So I can see Leicester scoring, definitely. Obviously, there's 3 goals this weekend. Players like Shannon O'Brien starting to score again. Hannah Kane, I thought, looked really good this weekend. She made sort of the team of the week that I put out. So it's not even just the new signings. It's some of those existing players that are either coming back from injury or starting to get into really good form. So I can definitely see Leicester scoring, and I think they might keep a clean sheet. Let's move on to the final game. I don't think we're going to have too much to say about this one. Chelsea-West Ham. West Ham have never beaten Chelsea. They've got 1 draw and 18 losses against them in all competitions. The last 4 WSL meetings have been 13-0 to Chelsea on aggregate. And obviously Chelsea have won all 8 home games this season. Another Chelsea win, I guess?
I mean, it's hard to see anything beyond that. I think, as you said earlier, West Ham only 1 point away from home all season. I feel bad because we covered their game by basically just slagging Spurs off and not mentioning them at all. But I do think they're low key one of the stories of the season. We spoke before the season began, and I think I know I certainly predicted them to go down. I can't remember if you guys did or said they'd be second bottom to Palace, But yeah, I mean, I think they're having a fantastic season. I think similarly to Everton, it's kind of gone under the radar because they started quite slow and they're sort of sneaking up the table. But yeah, I think they are having a terrific season. I think that midfield of Siren and Gorry is just so solid. The attacking players they've got they've got loads of options, loads of variety. Shakira Martinez looks like a real player. All that said, 5-0 to Chelsea.
Yeah, it's exactly that, isn't it? The West Ham have done so well. It's the first time ever they've had 5 wins in the season in the WSL. And you can say so many good things about them and how good their players have been, their signings have been, and the fact that although they're not particularly backed by the club as a whole, they seem to be doing really well with what they've got. But by the way, Chelsea are really good and they're going to thrash them.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think I was trying to force a narrative earlier of like, well, Chelsea are coming off the back of this City-a-thon. Bonpastor might be thinking, I'll rest some players, I'll rotate, I don't know whether Naomi Goma will be available then. She seems to want to try this back 3. Whether she might think that might be a game to experiment in or something. And I don't know whether she quite knows what to do with a midfield, like with Walsh coming in as well. But yeah, even with all of that, I don't think West Ham are going to have enough to really test them too much.
Yeah, I think we're all agreed. A Chelsea win is most likely. So they are the matches that are coming up this weekend. Let's move on. Well, we will play a game of Know Your Stat, the pod's game, everyone's favourite game, at the end. But first, let's just touch on Fantasy WSL. So in Fantasy WSL this week, I'm not going to talk too much about how I did, partly because not same as last week. I didn't want to talk about it because, or last week I didn't want to talk about it because I did rubbish. This week I did all right. I think I got something like 20 points more than the average. But I'm going to start off by talking about the team of the week, which was Sam M's team, which is Bunny Shaw. Which when you see that written down, it will make a lot more sense. It doesn't just say Bunny Shaw like the name. They are 15th in the world, partly helped to 112 points this week. They played the wall chip, so you get extra points for clean sheets. And they had Sarah Hongar, they had Maramielda, Williamson, Lurk, Gago. They all got double figures of points. And Maya Letitia, captain, got a massive 24, as well as having Leah Golton. Maramielda, Gago, and Lurk are all visionaries as well. So got even more points. And other than 0 points for Katie McCabe, everyone managed to score on that side. So well done, Sam M. I've got the numbers from Izzy, who friend of the pod, that some of you listeners will know about the most transferred in and out players. I'm going to ask you two. We will see who can give the most transferred in player this week. Obviously, we're only halfway through the week. Things might still change. But who do you think has been the most transferred in player this week?
I'm just wondering if someone like Bunny Shaw was dropped out of a lot of the teams due to the game week messing around with Man City. So I'd possibly guess at Bunny Shaw.
Transferred in?
But now it's transferred back in.
Yeah, but we don't know if she's fit yet.
That is true.
It's a bold tactic. Charlie, who's your guess?
Do you want a second guess at that? Or?
No, you go for it.
I don't know. I'm just having a look at the fixtures again. I feel like considering they've got Palace, it's going to be an Arsenal player. Mariona.
So I will say as well, this is net transfers. So it's not just transfers in. It's transferred in minus transferred out. Bunny Shaw is actually the second worst answer you could have given. She has net transfers of minus 1,145, which is something like 3 or 4% of the players in the game.
Yeah, so a lot of people getting rid of her and just
basically only.
So I was thinking maybe people already got rid of her because she's been injured for a few weeks and they had the game week stuff. That was my vague logic.
That would be the sort of thing that would make sense, but unfortunately, you've still got people like me who still have Bunny Shaw in their side and probably should take her out, which I'll probably be doing this week. Or I haven't made my decision yet. Guru Wrighton was the only player that's been transferred out more. Charlie, you said Mariona Caldente. She is the 7th most transferred in player this week. Those ahead of her, I'll go 6th to 1st, are Maya Letitia, Elizabeth Turland, Rachel McLaughlin of Brighton, Olivia Smith, obviously at home to Aston Villa, Alessia Russo away at Palace. I think that's probably partly Bunny Shaw being transferred out, Alessia Russo in. But number one this week, over 100 more than anyone else, was Honoka Hayashi, so far anyway, which I thought was quite interesting with Everton being away at Man United, but we'll see what comes. It's what the people want.
I thought you were going to say Shannon O'Brien.
No, she's not actually in the top 10, which is what I've got in front of me. But Shannon O'Brien was the visionary that got the most points this week, joint with Kelly Gago, 13 points each. I'm surprised Kelly Gago is still a visionary.
Yeah.
Those that don't know, visionary means that they're selected by fewer than 2% of the players in the game. So therefore, if they get a return, you get bonus points, basically. Verena Hanshaw was 3rd on the list of 12, and then Hannah Kane and Shalina Zadorsky, Madison Haley and Carolyn all had 11. Again, Carolyn was another one that I was like, I'm kind of surprised that she was a visionary. I hadn't picked up on that. But yeah, there are some stats from Fantasy WSL. We're getting near the end of the season now. Obviously, there's only 5 games left, but the makers of Fantasy WSL have launched Fantasy NWSL recently. If you're not in it yet, it's not too late. There's only 2 games in so far, so plenty of time to do well. Go download the Fantasy NWSL app, make your team, join the Statorino League with the code DECODING, all in caps. And I'll see you in there, see if you can beat me, because I am someone that does not know much about NWSL. I think me, Charli and Matt were talking before we started the pod. We're all kind of in the same boat where we don't know that much about the NWSL, but are kind of keen to learn more about it. And this is a good way to go about it. So we've all made a team. I'm not doing terribly, but I think given the fact that I don't know much about the NWSL, I think I'm doing all right.
Yeah. All I can say is at the moment I've backed Gotham quite heavily in terms of defence, and they haven't returned yet. So I'm going to be doing some transfers this week, I think.
Somehow I am 21st overall and second in your league.
Because
I was about to say, the Statorino League. Matt Clough is second, no disrespect to Egg FC. I am just outside the top 500 in the world, which I don't know how many players are playing Fantasy NWSL. I think there was something like 30 or 40,000 in the WSL game. So if there's similar in NWSL, I'm over the moon at being just outside the top 500. But there we go. Right. It's time for the main reason I'm sure that you've come on the pod, the main reason that anyone at home is listening. It's time to play a bit of Know Your Stat. So, Know Your Stat is the game of the podcast. It is Decoding the WSL's game. It is essentially a game of categories. I'm going to be giving Charli and Matt a category that's stat-based, obviously, as Decoding the WSL is. And you two are going to be trying to figure out who is on the list, playing the game categories. If you take too long, or if you give an incorrect answer, I will buzz you out. There are no lives this week. I know sometimes we have lives, but not this week. So if you both give an incorrect answer, you'll get another chance to go again because you have to outscore your opponent. But yeah, there we are. Simple game of categories. Hopefully everyone knows how to play. Who would like to go first?
I'll go. Given I humiliated myself on Bunny Shaw, I'll go there.
Okay then, right. In that case, Charli, you get to pick what sort of round we're going to start with. Would you like the round about shooting? Would you like the round about teams winning? Or would you like the round about goalkeeping?
Goalkeeping.
Okay. So starting with Matt, obviously. And in this one, I would like you to tell me the 12 goalkeepers that have made the most saves in the WSL this season. So this is anyone that has made 26 or more saves in the WSL. And obviously, although there are 12 goalkeepers and 12 teams in the WSL, it doesn't necessarily mean that these players play for 12 different teams. Something to be aware of. Matt, you to go first.
I'll go for Leicester's own Janina Leitzig.
Yep, she's a correct answer. 47 saves.
Courtney Brosnan.
Yep, number 1, 79.
Sabrine D'Angelo.
Sabrine D'Angelo is 6th on the list with 43.
Rachel Laws.
Rachel Laws is 11th with 26, joint 11th.
I thought that was risky.
Fallon Tullis-Joyce.
Yep, she is 5th on the list. She has made a lot of saves.
Hannah Hampton.
Yep, Hannah Hampton is 8th on the list. She plays every game. It's got to be on there.
It's true.
Shea Yanez.
Shea Yanez is 3rd on the list with 57.
I feel like I'm going to tap out this one. Lisa Kopp.
9th on the list, 34.
Becky Spencer.
Becky Spencer is joint 11th with Rachel Laws, 26.
Oh my God.
There's only 3 players left now. Are we going to get the first ever draw if you can get all the players?
I've just thought of one.
Daphne Van Domselaar.
Daphne Van Domselaar is 10th on the list.
Oh.
Kinga Shemik.
Kinga Shemik is 2nd on the list with 62. Charli, can you name the only player left on the list?
Oh, God, I've got 2 in my head, but I don't know which one to go for. Shea Yanez. Oh, have you?
Shea Yanez has already been said.
I didn't look at my notes.
Was the other one Sophie Baggerly?
It was Sophie Baggerly.
Oh, I forgot about Sophie Baggerly. Damn it.
You were so close, but Yeah, Sophie Bagley was the only one left. Matt takes that first round,
As
6-5.
long as
When there was only
all I've come in for today is to avoid the whitewash. I just wanted a consolation. Even if it's a consolation goal, I'm happy. I'm going away happy.
That was an own
Yeah.
goal from me. That was.
For listeners that don't know, Matt is the only person so far. I would say it's not like we played hundreds of games, but so far on Know Your Stat, Matt is the only player to be whitewashed.
Yeah, they probably would have guessed that when I said Bunny Shaw earlier.
But it's definitely not going to happen again. Might even happen the other way around. So this time Charlie's going to go first. Matt, do you want the round about teams winning, or do you want the round about shooting?
Let's go teams winning.
Teams winning. It's not technically teams because we are going for players again. But I would like you to name for me the 20 players with the most on-pitch goal difference this season. So on-pitch goal difference is while a player is on the pitch, how many goals their team scores minus how many goals their team concedes. So this is any player that has at least a plus 23 on-pitch goal difference.
Alessia Russo?
Yep, she's third on the list, 31.
Daphne Van Domselaar.
10th on the list with 25.
Katie McCabe?
Katie McCabe is third with 31, joint with Alessia Russo.
Leah Williamson.
Leah Williamson is sixth with 29.
Who can name the most Arsenal players?
Well,
Emily Fox.
Arsenal players. Yeah, she is joint 10th with Daphne Van Domselaar and plus 25.
Hannah Hampson.
Hannah Hampton is number 1, plus 36.
Millie Bright.
Yep, joint with Hannah Hampton, plus 36.
I nearly said someone that I think would have been a huge mistake. Erin Cuthbert.
Erin Cuthbert is plus 23, so just about makes the cut.
Lucy Bronze.
Lucy Bronze is plus 26. Correct answer.
Yui Hasegawa.
Yui Hasegawa is an incorrect answer. Has a plus 17 goal difference so far. So
No.
well done, Charlie. That means that you've won the second round. The players that you didn't get were Aggie Beaver-Jones, Caitlin Ford, Gura Wrighton, Mariona Caldente, Maya Letitia, Mara Ramirez, Fallon Tillis-Joyce, Millie Turner, Sondi Baltimore, Sjoeke Nusken, and Steph Catley. So that's
Man City was not the play there.
No,
Man City
goal
is not the
difference.
play. I think every player on that list is either Arsenal, Chelsea, or Man United. Okay, so on to the final round. Matt, you're going to go first on this one again, as you went first on the first round. This is the top 24 players that have taken the most shots in the WSL this season. So any player, there are 24 players on the list, and it is any player that has taken at least 24 shots.
Okay, Alessia Russo.
Yep, she is number 1, 58 shots.
Frida Marnham.
Frida Marnham is number 4.
Caitlin Ford.
26 shots, just about.
Bloody hell.
Bunny Shaw.
Yep, surprised you haven't gone for that one already. She has 52, second on the list.
Oh, man. Elizabeth Turland.
Yep, second on the list, also with 52.
This is going to sound mad, but Lauren Hemp.
Lauren Hemp's on there, 25 shots. So just about.
I don't know if she's been in and out of the team too much. Miedemar.
Correct.
Fagino.
Alba Fagino is an incorrect answer. She has had 17 shots so far this season, 46th on the list. So that means Matt takes it 2-1.
I've never. This means so much to me, guys. I've staved off relegation for another week.
Got another win.
I had a feeling that I was going to lose. I had a feeling.
The players that you didn't get, and I think you're going to kick yourself at some of these: Aggie Beaver-Jones, Bethany England, Ella Toone, Grace Clinton, Jill Rord, Johanna Ritten-Conrad, Jordan Nobbs, Katie Stengel, Katrina Gorry, Lauren James, Mara Ramirez, Nikita Paris, Olivia Smith, Rachel Daly, Rico Oeki, Sjoeke Nusken, and a player that I definitely thought you were going to say, Stina Blackstenius.
Oh, I nearly said Stina. I think Charlie would have been extra devastated if there was a Leicester player in there, but we weren't in too much danger of that.
Yeah, I did think about because obviously with 2 Leicester fans on the pod, I did think about doing a list that went long enough to get a Leicester player on it. But I think the game might have gone on for a while, unfortunately. I've got to cap it at some point. But well done, Matt. That is your first Know Your Stat win. 50% win rate, same as Charli now. Pretty happy with that?
Yeah, no one's doing goal difference on this, are they? It's all about the 3 points. I'm thrilled. Everyone in the dressing room's buzzing.
We'll take it home. And Charli is getting to beat today.
Yeah, well, just got to bounce back next time, haven't we? Have to have us back on so I can.
Oh, you will be back on. Don't worry. I do quite like the fact that every time pretty much that I've done this, a game of Know Your Stat, whoever has lost has gone, oh, you're going to have us back. I'm pretty sure, Matt, you said it last time as well when you lost.
I think so.
And it's gone well. You obviously went away, you trained well, you put in the effort on the training pitch, and the man.
Yeah, all those long dark nights just staring at FB Ref. It's all paid off.
Well done. Congratulations. Thank you both for coming on today. Do you want to just plug your pod and your page as well? Because I know obviously you've been doing the pod as well, but you've been a bit more active on social media now as well, haven't you?
Yeah, we've been trying to keep up with the youth. So obviously, as Sam mentioned, our podcast is called Why Was She? It is very much more vibes based and less structured than Sam's podcast, so just be prepared for that. But yeah, so wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us, and then just keep up with us on Blue Sky if you're on there, and Instagram. If you just search Why Was She on both of those, you'll find us. Yeah, give us a follow.
Yeah, we'd recommend it as podcast artist. I think I've listened to every episode. I don't think I've missed any. And there was one out yesterday. I want to say it came out. I listened to it this morning anyway, but I think it came out yesterday. But yeah, definitely worth a listen because you cover quite a bit more of a breadth of topics than I do as well, because I'm very focused on decoding the WSL specifically, whereas you tend to look at international breaks and stuff like that as well, and obviously touch a bit on the NWSL and things as well. So yeah, if you want a bit more of a broader listen, I'd recommend Why Was She? But thank you very much, listener, for tuning in to Decoding the WSL today. As ever, if you enjoyed it, do make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow at Decoding the WSL on Instagram, and obviously follow me at Statorino on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. Thank you, Charli. Thank you, Matt, for joining me. Thank you again, listener, and I will speak to you at the next one.